Welcome to the Core Women Podcast, the place for women entrepreneurs, authors, and self-starters looking to build community and gain valuable insights through expert interviews with women at the top of their game. Join your host, podcaster, producer, expert coach, entrepreneur, and author, Dr. Summer Watson, as she aims to inspire and empower you through these candid conversations. Lean in and embrace the journey. It's time to start the show. Here's your host, Dr. Summer Watson.
Welcome back to the Core Women Podcast. Today's guest is Kate Wells, who is a hormone expert, science educator, advocate for women's health, author of A Forecast for Health, Understanding Your Potential for Lifelong Wellness, and CEO of Parlor Games, which is a company unapologetically focused on saving the world one vagina at a time. Kate combines biochemistry with business savvy to demystify women's health in midlife and beyond. In this bold and empowering episode, we dive into hormone health, misunderstood symptoms, and why women over 40 need real answers. Welcome, Kate, and let's jump right into this.
Hi, Summer. So happy to be here. Love to talk about my favorite topic.
Well, I'm excited and I can't wait to jump into this. But before we dive into your professional journey, if you could describe your life to this point in one word, what would that word be and why?
Hopscotch.
Oh,
I seem to go from one thing to another, to another, to another. And at the time, it really didn't make a whole lot of sense. But now at 62, looking back, I can see the pathway. And there's a lot of beauty to it. So hopscotch.
hopscotch. I can tell you, I've never gotten that word, and I've done over 350 episodes of this podcast. So thank you for that word. I love it. So let's talk a bit about your journey. Let's talk about your background and how you started in education and that evolved into leadership and hormone labs and what sparked your passion for hormone health and women's wellness.
Well, I did start as a teacher. I come from a long line of teachers. We're kind of bossy and we like to tell people what to do. And of course, you get to do that a lot in a classroom. I did fall in love with education, with explaining things, with seeing the light go on in somebody's eyes when they got something and when they could, can translate that into the real world. So I had 6 years as a high school teacher, but then found that because I've always been ambitious, if I was going to progress in my career in teaching, I wasn't going to be in the classroom. And that made no sense to me because I wasn't going to get paid very well for that. So I switched into business and I was fortunate to join Lloyd's Bank Management Training Program. And a whole new world of business and leadership and skills and tools opened up to me. And I was doing very well with that when my husband at the time came to me and said, "Hey," and we were living in England, "I found a job in Portland, Oregon. Shall we go?" There was a silence, not a long one. I can fill most silences. But I realized, well, there's a business school there in Portland, there's a university, and I will go. I can do my MBA because I wouldn't have a work permit anyway. So I did my MBA, moved, and it just continued to deepen my fascination with business and the business process. I love so many aspects of it. You look at it as a system, how everything weaves together. And after my studies were done, I had a number of jobs where I kind of was honing my skills in terms of, managing and practicing and leadership. And I found my way into laboratory medicine. And I was the COO for a couple of laboratories that were focused on salivary hormone testing. And this whole new world of science, biochemistry, and hormones and neurotransmitters, and all this exciting stuff came just flooding into my brain. And we would go to conferences. We would exhibit there as a vendor, and we would get talking to practitioners. But what I did was go and listen to all the talks. After the breaks were over, I was the first one sitting in a seat in the front row, lapping up all this new information. And so I built my own knowledge very specifically about hormones and neurotransmitters, just because I'm fascinated by how the body works. It's a long story, of course, I'm 62, but to shorten it, I found that when I was at these events, I would be surrounded by the other vendors, women from other companies, and they would all start coming to me and asking me about hormones. And it didn't take me long to realize that women really don't have the information they need to navigate through perimenopause, through that more intense menopause transition, and then all those 30 plus years after menopause. They don't have that information. And that led me to write a forecast for health. It looks at, some of the cornerstones of health about sleep, about hormones, about nutrition, about toxicity in our bodies, about inflammation. But it also rolls into this chapter on being ready to change because we have to change what we're doing in order to get different results. I wanted to create the understanding in women's minds that, oh, they can do things differently. They can find different practitioners. They can be healthy and well. And from that led me into developing parlor games with my best friend. She had come to me and said, Kate, my vagina doesn't work anymore. Help, help. And she knew that I had solutions. And I got her back on track. And, a couple of weeks later, she's on the phone. She and her husband have got well back on track. So we sat around and we talked about it. And she's an entrepreneur, and I love the business process. And I had finished up my work with a genetics testing company doing product development. And I was like, what am I going to do now? And we knew the demand was there for women in particular who were experiencing vaginal dryness, urinary incontinence, all those issues that come really post-menopause.
Yeah.
And so we started Parlor Games, and it has been a wild ride.
Well, this is so exciting. I love that evolution. I want to just take a quick step back because as you said, it's so important to be familiar with what you're going through, and maybe a lot of women don't, or maybe they don't really recognize those changes in their body, or more so associate them with perimenopause. Someone like you would be great in relation to being part of a group, understanding that better, explaining that to women where they have a better idea, where it's maybe not so clinical. And maybe it's just a bit more friendly and understandable where you're not sick. This is part of your process of being a woman. And I think a lot of times when we as women, we go into our practitioners and they almost treat it like a sickness. And it's like, man, this is part of being a woman. Can we talk about this a little bit more openly, friendly, with more ideas? What are your thoughts about that and it being so clinical in the sense that, yes, there's a lot of science to it, there's a lot of wellness to it, but from a different perspective where we're just understanding that it is a different time of our lives.
I think the mental model that we have of medicine in this country is very much about sickness care.
Right.
That's why we go to the practitioner. And as a rule, the medical industry in this country is pretty good at sickness care.
Yeah.
The wellness care, that is not funded by insurance. And so the system is not set up to support practitioners who want to take a greater amount of time with their patients, who want to be able to educate them, who want to help them understand how to optimize their lives, how to be well through all these transitions. So the system is the challenge, I think. And so women are left, casting over here, going to the internet, going to this, talking to their friends. They're looking all over the place to try and find information and distill it into a way that makes sense for them. And that has been a big part of our mission at Parlor Games. It is to provide this information. Everything we have is science-based. And we have over 140 blogs, articles on our website that look at all sorts of issues related to changes in hormones. So, someone who goes to our website and looks at our blogs, there is good, solid information there. And so, what we're trying to do is close that gap because the medical system isn't designed to deliver it. And some women are fortunate, they can go to perhaps an integrated medicine practitioner who does take more time. They're paying out of pocket, and that practitioner is taking more time to educate them. They've got resources available so someone can learn, and they do have access to that. That's not a high proportion of women. Many women don't have those resources. They don't have those practitioners in their community. So, what we're trying to do is provide a forum for idea sharing. And one of the things that we have for our customers is a private Facebook group. And anyone who comes into that, it's 36,000 women strong. And anyone who comes in and asks a question, they will get answers from so many people. And they will see the broad spectrum of what this perimenopause and menopause experience is like, and maybe find a story that they resonate with because it's them.
Yeah. Well, I love that, Kate, because when you describe all of this, and I ask the question about it not being so clinical when you go to your provider and have a real conversation where you can talk about wellness, there was that distinction between sickness and how the mainstream medical model approaches it, and also your model, which is wellness, which also includes prevention, education, optimization of wellness in our lives. And that makes a huge difference, just even in the way that sounds. Now, I'm a practitioner. I have a PhD, a doctorate in clinical psych. I am a researcher. I've done both qualitative and quantitative. So I understand the science aspects, and that is important. But how we talk about it, how we reframe that, our mindset around that can make such a huge difference.
Mhm.
Which leads me into my next question. And thank you, by the way, for mentioning Parlor Games. And we'll talk more about that and how people can find Parlor Games and get in touch and integrated into your business where they can find a group of women who are talking about these issues. But I do want to ask you a question. You say you're saving the world one vagina at a time. Why is that phrase more than just a tagline? What's the bigger message here?
One of the challenges that women face as they get into those postmenopausal years is that their estrogen has dropped. And estrogen is very essential for the health of vaginal tissue, the vulva tissue, for urinary health as well. And so many women have been told, oh, it's just part of getting older. Or they're given, oh, here's this prescription for, a pharmaceutical that may make a difference. They're not supported for the 30 or more years post-menopause where they may be dealing with this symptom, this issue. And the challenge with that for women is that it diminishes their sex life, which is very painful for some of them. They want to be in an intimate relationship with their loved one. It can reduce our capacity to, wear fun clothing, like tight clothing. You know, that tissue in the vulva can get so friable and so tender that anything rubbing on it can be painful. I mean, even wiping after you've been to the bathroom can become a challenge.
Mm.
So, this particular area of women's health is really disrupting to a vibrant life after menopause. And it just so happened that this was, Kirsty's area, my business partner, that I helped her with. And we have taken that as our starting point because, we do have the vision of women feeling sexy in themselves, being vibrant in themselves, being energetic in themselves, not having to diminish their presence in the world because they're dealing with this issue. I mentioned in passing, urinary health as well. Estrogen is also critically important for the muscle bladder neck, which is a part of continence,
Mhm.
and for the skin that lines the urethra, the tube from the bladder to the outside world. And so, if we don't have estrogen supplied to those tissues, there's an increase in stress incontinence, which can become with, sneeze, or if you jump up and down too quickly all of a sudden without being prepared. And that can progress to the need to wear incontinence support.
Mm.
When a woman gets to the point where she's scheduling her life around where's the nearest bathroom, not drinking fluids because she is doing scheduled dehydration, we have got big impacts in women's lives. We want to unwind that. We want to give women back their freedom and their vitality if that's what they're looking for.
Such important information. You have just schooled me and enlightened me in so many different ways. I'm 56, so I do know what you're talking about. And I have experienced some of these things. And I do know the importance of estrogen as well, because being somebody who has been on it and has had to go off of it it has made a significant difference. And there's a reason for that, and I can go into that in a different show. But such great information. What are some of the most overlooked or misunderstood symptoms of menopause and post-menopause that women need to know about?
Let's start with kind of perimenopause and that menopause transition there. One of the things that even practitioners don't really latch onto is the fact that progesterone, which is estrogen's natural balancer, progesterone stops before estrogen does, or it diminishes before estrogen does. And so you have an imbalance. You're still making estrogen, although that might be fluctuating a bit. But without progesterone to balance that estrogen, that's when you begin to get a whole host of symptoms appearing. It can be the mood swings, it can be the rages, stop breathing in my space when someone comes a little bit too close to you. It can be poor sleep. It can be foggy thinking. Foggy thinking is a big issue for women when their progesterone is dropping and they still got estrogen. It can be changes in weight. Weight
Mm,
gain is really common, and we know that progesterone is very important for balancing glucose and insulin within the body. And so the loss of this powerful messenger, progesterone, has these symptoms in perimenopause. Estrogen is the one that's all sexy, gets the attention, people talk about it, and progesterone is your quiet, calming hormone that has such important effects that just never seems to get attention. So that's a key thing for women to know. And you may not need to supplement with estrogen for a while, but making sure you have adequate progesterone goes a long way to managing some of those symptoms. And so then after menopause, really what you're looking at there is that all of your hormones have dropped. Perhaps not cortisol or stress response hormone, not so much, but estrogen will have dropped after menopause. Progesterone's in the toilet by this point. Testosterone is diminishing. And another major hormone, dihydroepiandrosterone, which is one of our wellness hormones, from which many of the other hormones flow, that is also diminishing as well. And so we've been used to firing on all cylinders on all of those hormones. And then after menopause, those just gradually diminish. And it's no wonder we begin to feel tired. It's no wonder we begin to have those genitourinary symptoms. It's no wonder we can't get off the sofa or motivate ourselves to cook a nutritious meal or go exercise. It's no wonder we lose interest in sex. It's no wonder we're like, I know I came in this room with a reason, but it's gone. All of those other symptoms that occur after menopause. And it's not just forgetting where your keys are while you're in a room.
right.
There's bigger changes happen in our brains. And we need to continue forming memories. We need to remember what we said a week ago. And that capacity diminishes as our hormone levels diminish.
There's so much out there that we don't know about. So being part of your collective, being part of Parlor Games will be so important for so many women who have these questions, who don't necessarily understand what is happening with their bodies, their brains, their overall wellness. So great information. What practical advice do you have for women who feel unheard or dismissed by their doctors when it comes to menopause symptoms?
If you're not getting anywhere with your practitioner, well, go find another one. We do have access to the internet. We can go research for practitioners who do hormones. To get at a very granular level here, go into your health plan and look at the doctors in your area and call them and say, do you have someone on staff who's really into hormones? Do some research there. If you're not making any progress with that route, one of the things that you can do is go armed with information. And it's one of the resources we have is how to talk to your doctor about bioidentical hormones. And we've got a handout that you can give to them and say, I want help with this. But the biggest thing I think I want women to understand is that they should expect more. It is not good enough to be told, oh, this is just part of getting older. You're going to have to put up with it. Practitioners swear that Hippocratic oath, first do no harm. And if you tell a woman, oh, this is just part of getting old, or, hormones aren't good anymore, which is nonsense, you're doing harm because you're not helping a woman navigate through a significant portion of her life. So expect more. read upon information ahead of time. Get your points written down. It's like, I want to talk about progesterone. I want to talk about bioidentical hormones. Yes, they are safe. Don't be silly. And have those talking points so that they're in front of you and be clear. I expect more.
And also go to Parlor Games. Be part of, what did you say, 38,000
36,000, yes.
women in
Hmm.
particular who are looking
Hmm.
for answers, who also have a resource in you and your partner in finding out those answers. And if you don't know those answers, guess what? One of those women will have an idea about how you can either go and find that answer, or maybe they have experienced something along those same lines. Your situation may not be the same, but it may be a starting point. And that's a great starting point, is to feel like I've got other people who are there going through something similar,
Right.
or we're going through the same things, but in similar ways. It might not feel the same way to all of us
Hmm.
because our symptoms may feel different in each of us because of the balance of these hormones. That can look different for each of us. And, it's funny. And I asked this question because last week I had a hysterectomy when I was 34. But lately I've had some serious sweats, like just sweating profusely. And I was like, what is going on here? Right? Like I had a hysterectomy at 34. And I said to my doctor, let's test my hormones. Let's see where they're at. He's like, why? You had a hysterectomy when you're 34. What's this gonna do? And I said, let's just do it. I want to see where all this falls out, and then we can talk more about this. But his first response was, but why?
So why? Right.
Ah, so
Hmm.
yeah, so this is so important to be around other folks that are experiencing something similar to get the answers that you need. So go check out Parlor Games. In your book, A Forecast for Health, you talk about understanding lifelong wellness. How do hormones factor into long-term health planning for women?
Oh, in everything. Hormones are these chemical messengers that turn things on and turn things off throughout our entire body. They impact our thyroid function. They impact our ability to generate heat. They impact our ability to form new bone and maintain new bone. They impact our brains and our capacity to think and remember things. They impact our mood and our ability to go out into the world and bring our awesomeness. They impact our ability to think about doing things in a new way. We know that glucose and insulin are important in our digestive function. We wouldn't dream of living our lives without glucose and insulin. Why shouldn't we live our lives without, our key hormones as well? And for someone like you who had a hysterectomy in her 30s, that's 50 years or more that you could be living without these important chemical messengers. And one of the things that I really, would want your listeners to understand that hormones are for life, not just for reproduction.
Yeah, absolutely. We have covered so much information, and thank you. But as we come to the close of the interview, what's one tip you would offer every woman about their hormones and lifelong wellness?
I would say love yourself, because when you love and value yourself, you will take actions that support your health. Whether that's through community and knowing that you're not alone in experiencing these symptoms, whether it's through reading to understand what's going on. Love yourself enough not to put up with a message that diminishes the role of hormones and its importance in your health. We have so much offer. Women are such wise, such caring, thoughtful individuals, and when we diminish their ability to contribute to culture, whether that's locally or globally, we lose something. So value yourself and know that you have so much to give, and it's worth learning about hormones to help you give what you have to give.
Thank you, Kate, for joining me on the Core Women podcast.
Thank you for giving me the chance to ramble, to enjoy talking about hormones. I really appreciate it.
Well, I've loved this conversation. You can follow Kate Wells on LinkedIn and on Instagram at Parlor Games Fun, on Facebook at My Parlor Games. You can also go to YouTube and find her at Parlor Games Science and at www parlor-games.com. And you can also find her book, A Forecast for Health, Understanding Your Potential for Lifelong Wellness, by connecting with Kate.
Thank you for joining us on the Core Women Podcast with Dr. Summer Watson. We're so glad you're here and would love to connect more with you. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Core Women, and on Twitter at Core Women 1. For more about Core Women and Dr. Watson, visit corewomen.com. Want more support and resources for amazing women like you? Great! Join Dr. Watson and Jen Fontanilla at the Life, Love, and Money Collective, a Core Women production that aids in understanding the key traits that might be getting in the way of living a life that you are absolutely passionate about. Connect with Summer and Jen and find out more at thelifeloveandmoney.com.